Бачите, у мене там, бачите, кішка. Хай буде вона хороша. Мене звати Катя, я вчуся у школі у Києві, це столиця України. І я розмовляю як рідними мовами українською та російською. Доволі добре знаю англійську. Кішка не лізь, кішка. Моя кішка полізла із дому. Ну, не суть. Також я вчу ще німецьку, японську і ще деякі мови, так сказати, коли є час, наприклад, ісландську та фінську. Тобто я люблю мови, дуже люблю мови, мені подобається розбиратися в них, я також хочу поступити на лінгвістику куди-небудь. Ось. Я хотіла, напевне, у цьому відео трошки розказати про те, як у нас українська мова взагалі функціонує в Україні. Ну, як здавалось би, напевно, функціонує. Всі розмовляють українською та й все. Ще одною, як мінімум, або як просто рідною, незважаючи на те, що по, так сказати, етнічній характеристиці вони не росіяни, ці люди. Ось тому у нас дуже багато людей розмовляють російською набагато частіше, ніж українською, незважаючи навіть на те, що російська не є державною мовою. Ну і це доволі сумно, і я хоч більше життя прожила у місті на Заході, і як здавалось би, у нас так вірять, що на Заході розмовляють українською мовою такою доволі чистою. Не говорячи вже про Львів там, чи Закарпаття, де взагалі діалекти, хоч дай Бог мені зрозуміти. Тому у мене у місті Рівне, це в обласному центрі, все було доволі сумно, якщо чесно. Більшість людей просто розмовляли на суржику. І коли я приїхала сюди, я старалася розмовляти все ж таки українською доволі чистою. Проте, коли мене в перший раз не зрозуміла однокласниця, я розумію, що вона розуміла, що я говорила, але їй було просто незвично. Я зрозуміла, що треба переходити на російську мову, і насправді я навіть почала забувати українську мову, це дуже сумно, тому що дійсно і інтернет, і всі люди навколо розмовляють тебе російською мовою. Дуже тяжко при цьому розмовляти якоюсь іншою. Особисто мені. Я знаю людей, які навіть при такій ситуації все одно розмовляють українською мовою, проте мені це дуже тяжко. Ось. Але так, я і читаю, і пишу українською мовою, всяке. Так що, я не стараюся, українською, то й що. Я стараюся якось це підтримувати, так сказати, у собі. Тому ось, це, напевно, все, що я хотіла розказати українською мовою. Пробачте, у мене там, бачите, кішка. Хай буде вона хороша. Привіт! Мене звати Катя, я вчуся у школі у Києві, це столиця України. І я розмовляю як рідними мовами українською та російською. Доволі добре знаю англійську. Кішка не лізь, кішка. Моя кішка полізла із дому. Не суть. Також я вчу ще німецьку, японську і ще деякі мови, так сказати, коли є час, наприклад, ісландську та фінську. Тобто я люблю мови, дуже люблю мови, мені подобається розбиратися в них, я також хочу поступити на лінгвістику куди-небудь. Ось. Я хотіла, напевне, у цьому відео трошки розказати про те, як у нас українська мова взагалі функціонує в Україні. Як здавалось би, вона повинна функціонувати. Всі розмовляють українською та й все. Та ні. Пережиток СРСР, те, що всі розмовляють російською мовою як ще одною, як мінімум, або як просто рідною, незважаючи на те, що по, так сказати, етнічній характеристиці вони не росіяни, ці люди. Ось тому у нас дуже багато людей розмовляють російською набагато частіше, ніж українською, незважаючи навіть на те, що російська не є державною мовою. І це доволі сумно, і я хоч більше життя прожила у місті на заході, і як здавалося б, у нас так вірять, що на заході розмовляють українською мовою такою доволі чистою. Не говорячи вже про Львів там чи Закарпаття, де взагалі діалекти, хоч дай Бог мені зрозуміти. Тому у мене у місті Рівне, це в обласному центрі, все було доволі сумно, якщо чесно. Більшість людей просто розмовляли на суржику. І коли я приїхала сюди, я старалася розмовляти все ж таки українською доволі чистою. Проте, коли в мене в перший раз не зрозуміла однокласниця, я розумію, що вона розуміла, що я говорила, але їй було просто незвично. Я зрозуміла, що треба переходити на російську мову, і насправді я навіть почала забувати українську мову, це дуже сумно, тому що дійсно і інтернет, і всі люди навколо розмовляють тебе російською мовою. Дуже тяжко при цьому розмовляти якоюсь іншою. Особисто мені. Я знаю людей, які навіть при такій ситуації все одно розмовляють українською мовою, проте мені це дуже тяжко. Ось. Але так, я і читаю, і пишу українською мовою, всяке. Так що, я не стараюся, українською, то що. Я стараюся якось це підтримувати, так сказати, у собі. Тому ось, це, напевно, все, що я хотіла розказати українською мовою. Пробачте, у мене там, бачите, кішка. Хай буде вона хороша. Привіт. Мене звати Катя, я вчуся у школі у Києві, це столиця України. І я розмовляю як рідними мовами українською та російською. Доволі добре знаю англійську. Кішка на світі. Також я вчу ще німецьку, японську і ще деякі мови, так сказати, коли є час, наприклад, ісландську та фінську. Тобто я люблю мови, дуже люблю мови, мені подобається розбиратися в них. Я також хочу поступити на лінгвістику куди-небудь. Ось. Я хотіла, напевне, у цьому відео трошки розказати про те, як у нас українська мова взагалі функціонує в Україні. Як здавалось би, вона повинна функціонувати. Всі розмовляють українською та і все. Та ні. Пережиток СРСР, те, що всі розмовляють російською мовою, як ще характеристиці вони не росіяни, ці люди. Ось тому у нас дуже багато людей розмовляють російською набагато частіше, ніж українською, незважаючи навіть на те, що російська не є державною мовою. І це доволі сумно, і я хоч більшість життя прожила у місті на заході, і як здавалося б, у нас так вірять, що на заході розмовляють українською мовою такою доволі чистою. Не говорячи вже про Львів там чи Закарпаття, де взагалі діалекти, хоч дай Бог мені зрозуміти. Тому у мене у місті Рівне, це в обласному центрі, все було доволі сумно, якщо чесно. Більшість людей просто розмовляли на суржику. І коли я приїхала сюди, я старалася розмовляти все ж таки українською доволі чистою. Проте, коли в мене в перший раз не зрозуміла однокласниця, я розумію, що вона розуміла, що я говорила, але їй було просто незвично. Я зрозуміла, що треба переходити на російську мову, і насправді я навіть почала забувати українську мову, це дуже сумно, тому що дійсно і інтернет, і всі люди навколо розмовляють тебе російською мовою. Дуже тяжко при цьому розмовляти якоюсь іншою. Особисто мені. Я знаю людей, які навіть при такій ситуації все одно розмовляють українською мовою, проте мені це дуже тяжко. Ось. Так, я і читаю, і пишу українською мовою, всяке. Так що, я не стараюся, українською, то й що. Я стараюся якось це підтримувати, так сказати, у собі. Тому ось, Це, напевно, все, що я хотіла розказати українською мовою. Пробачте, у мене там, бачите, кішка. Хай буде вона хороша. Привіт. Мене звати Катя, я вчуся в школі в Києві, це столиця України. І я розмовляю як рідними мовами українською та російською. Доволі добре знаю англійську. Кішка не ліз, кішка. Моя кішка полізла із дому, ну, на світ. Також я вчу німецьку, японську і ще деякі мови, так сказати, коли є час, наприклад, ісландську та фінську. Тобто я люблю мови, дуже люблю мови, мені подобається розбиратися в них. Я також хочу поступити на лінгвістику куди-небудь. Ось. Я хотіла, напевне, у цьому відео трошки розказати про те, як у нас українська мова взагалі функціонує в Україні. Ну, як здавалось би, вона повинна функціонувати. Всі розмовляють українською та і все. Та ні. Пережиток СРСР, те, що всі розмовляють російською мовою як ще одною, як мінімум, або як просто рідною, незважаючи на те, що по, так сказати, етнічній характеристиці вони не росіяни, ці люди. Ось тому у нас дуже багато людей розмовляють російською набагато частіше, ніж українською, незважаючи навіть на те, що російська не є державною мовою. Ну і це доволі сумно, і я хоч більше життя прожила в місті на Заході, і як здавалось би, ну, у нас так вірять, що на Заході розмовляють українською мовою такою доволі чистою. Говорячи вже про Львів там, чи Закарпаття, де взагалі діалекти, хоч дай Бог мені зрозуміти. Тому у мене у місті Рівне, це в міському центрі, ну, все було доволі сумно, якщо чесно. Більшість людей просто розмовляли на суржику. І коли я приїхала сюди, якби я старалася розмовляти все ж таки українською доволі чистою. Проте, коли в мене в перший раз не зрозуміла однокласниця, ну, я розумію, що вона розуміла, що я говорила, але їй було просто незвично. Я зрозуміла, що треба переходити на російську мову, і насправді я навіть почала забувати українську мову, це дуже сумно, тому що дійсно і інтернет, і всі люди навколо розмовляють тебе російською мовою. Дуже тяжко при цьому розмовляти якоюсь іншою. Ну, особисто мені. Я знаю людей, які навіть при такій ситуації все одно розмовляють українською мовою, проте мені це дуже тяжко. Ось. А, ну, але так, я і читаю, і пишу українською мовою, всяке. Так що я не стараюся, якби, я українською точно. Я стараюся якось це підтримувати, так сказати, у собі. Тому ось, це, напевно, все, що я хотіла розказати українською мовою.
saying, I think this is an important case. I'm interested in seeing what happened, and others can do whatever they like. But tomorrow I will also go to the gym and do some regular stuff. That's all. So, everyone, have a good night. We can find someone to raid today. Good man. And Richard, thank you for 5 months. You can send us wishes Chris is the street cams on live if people want to continue. Where is he live? I just have to check if I have some friends we should send you into.
All right. What up? Okay, guys, we're officially back. Let's get into it. All right. So let's take a look here. It's hot where I am. Yeah. I just got shocked by this. Oh my god, that's crazy. Has that ever happened to you? Where you have like an iPhone? It shocks you, I mean? It hacks you. I'm thinking about the Russia. I'm thinking about the anonymous group that has apparently anonymous has
Kismac _ just resubscribed
Kizzy.
for 23 months.
Hi Kizzy, welcome back. How are you today? Hope everything's great. Hope you're safe. And you're still in the US, right? Alright. Hey Trabuda. I heard Germany is going to supply with anti-aircraft Stinger missiles to help them shoot down helicopters. This is true, yes. So Germany has recently just it's you know, it's funny. Germany is such an interesting country because after having one of the world's worst dictator leaders, the German people themselves have grown to have a huge amount of empathy in their hearts for people who are going through tough times. Remember I was telling you about countries that have really experienced something on the ground in their nation? It seems that Germany still has strong memories of what it was like when Hitler was in control of their country. And this is why, for example, they accept so many refugees. And this is also seemingly the case when they are one of the first to provide some really great assistance to the Ukrainian people. Hi, hello, how are you tonight? Really good yesterday information educational stream. I'm glad. Germany is sending anti-chemical suits and gear. Yes. Hey, Nala, come here. Okay, guys, hold on, sorry, my dog just arrived. All right, guys, so let's get...
It's still radioactive, and now
hearing about this, and they're apparently broadcasting Ukrainian music all over Russian television right now.
Has reported an increased level of radiation from the site.
So apparently there's more radiation going into the atmosphere and the air around the Chernobyl area, which some people are speculating is just simply because of all the heavy military tanks that are rolling around on the ground over there, but we can't really confirm that yet.
And Ukraine's Interior Ministry have detected higher than usual gamma radiation levels from around the decommissioned Chernobyl nuclear plant zone. Although they did not mention the exact radiation levels, Ukrainian authorities have now blamed the movement of heavy military equipment lifting radioactive dust into the air.
Hey, Savadir, how are you doing today? Welcome
But
back to the coverage of
has
the
dismissed
Russian
all these
invasion.
reports of high radiation levels from the Chernobyl site. A Russian spokesperson has confirmed the safety of the radioactive site, stating that both Russian and Ukrainian personnel are taking care of the security on the site.
Hey, Balloon. All right, so remember, guys, that one of the main reasons why we might want to be worried about this is because there's still active radioactive, basically waste that's being hidden under tons and tons of concrete in the Chernobyl area. But basically, the concern with this is that there's an active conflict happening very close to the site, and there still is a potential possibility for a disastrous occurrence which could happen, which would be that the Chernobyl site could leak. Whether or not there was an attack there that was to cause an explosion, there's a potential possibility for some of that radiation to still leak out and radioactive materials to leak out. And since it's so close to Europe, it's just a very nervous place. It could have a lot of effects on the rest of Europe. So it's a location where active fighting that could occur in the area could release potentially detrimental or extremely dangerous radiation all across Europe. So this is why the fact that the Chernobyl site is close to the conflict that's happening within the Ukraine is it's very concerning for a lot of people who know what could potentially happen if there were to be any sort of explosion. Now, currently, the Russians are not doing anything with the site other than apparently moving some heavy military equipment around in the area. But that heavy military equipment already has caused a rise in the
118 just resubscribed.
Is it just
for
me,
18
guys? Is
months.
that alert really
Hey.
loud, or is it just me? Can I turn these alerts down just a little bit? Hey, Ziad, thank you for the sub, by the way. Welcome back. Is it not too loud? Okay, maybe I'm quiet. I suppose potentially I'm quiet. Okay, so this is why this is a bit of a concern. Now, the Russians are saying that they're not releasing any extra radiation. They're not doing anything with the site other than having heavy military equipment moving around in the area. So for the time being, it's a stable situation, but it's a very nerve-wracking situation for anybody who's kind of aware of what could potentially be a disastrous outcome should any of this radioactive material leak into the atmosphere and start to spread across Eastern Europe, Western Europe. Stop it. My dogs are fighting.
Радиоактивный фон в районе АЭС в норме. Персонал станции продолжает обслуживать объекты атомной электростанции в штатном режиме и отслеживает радиоактивную обстановку.
The still radioactive site, Chernobyl, lies some 100 kilometers from Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. It is located on the shortest route from Belarus to the Ukrainian capital. The power plant is also attributed to be a factor in the collapse of the Soviet Union. In April of 1986, its fourth reactor exploded during a botched-up safety test, sending clouds of radiation billowing across much of Europe and even reaching the United States. The catastrophe seems to have contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union just a few years later. Ukraine's other reactors are not in exclusion zones, but they contain nuclear fuel, which is a
Sorry,
lot
guys,
more
that's happening in the background.
The risks of fighting around these reactors remain significantly
Doggies
high,
are fighting.
concern
Russia and the
for
Ukraine are
world at
fighting.
large.
Everybody's fighting. Alright, I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. Oh wow, it's really loud anyway, isn't it? Okay, yeah. Let me turn off this lo-fi music too. All right, so this is partially what I wanted to cover, but I'm also going to cover a little bit more of I want to cover like a few things on Twitter. Let's go into a little bit of the let's go into this. Hold on, let me see.
The Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, a city of 3 million people, is battling Russian invasion for the third straight day. Sleepless and terrified Ukrainians witnessed a deadly overnight assault by Russian forces. Residents in an apartment block had a close shave. when a rocket hit the building earlier this morning. CCTV footage from inside and outside the block showed the moment of impact. It is not clear at this moment if there are any casualties, but officials were seen rescuing injured residents.
Пожежу ліквідовано, загроза руйнування житлового будинку прибуло на місце подій і станом на зараз проводять евакуацію. Рятувальники головного управління. Сьогодні зранку у Києві ворог знову здійснив цинічну атаку на цивільну інфраструктуру столиці, поціливши у багатоповерхівку. Так, 26 лютого до ДСНС надійшла інформація, що по проспекту Лобановського 6.
Amid the mounting offensive, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to stay and fight. Zelensky has rejected an evacuation offer from Washington and has insisted that he will continue to fight.
Зараз в мережі дуже багато з'явилось фейкової інформації, що, немов я закликаю.
Much fake information has appeared on the internet, as if I had called to lay down arms and if there had been an evacuation. Here's the situation. I'm here. We won't lay down arms. We will defend our country. Because
Okay,
our arms are our
so
truth.
we've
Our
already
truth is that it's our
already
land,
covered
our
a little bit of
country,
this.
our children, and we
Zelensky has
will
been
defend
offered
all
to
of
be
this.
evacuated
That's it.
by
That's
the
all I wanted to say.
United States.
Glory to
He's
Ukraine.
refusing to leave Ukraine. He says, "I need assistance, not an escape route out. I need assistance, not a ride."
Сказати. Слава Богу.
So
Sounds of gunfire, shelling, air raid sirens and
this is the
airstrikes.
third day. In case you guys are really new to what's going on, this is the third day of the conflict, the invasion, what's happening with Russia.
Echoed in the
We're covering just outside of the city. We're covering Kyiv presently.
streets of Kiev. At least 198 Ukrainians, including 3 children, have been killed so far.
So we're at 200, but I'm sure that this figure is a little bit old. I'm sure there may have accounted for more deaths now since the building was exploded this morning with a rocket. What's up, Young? Rate Zelensky 1 to 10, obviously of 10. Also, by the way, not that this is necessarily an appropriate comment at the time, but his wife is also very good looking. They're a good looking couple and they're very brave right now.
Ukrainian troops were seen clearing the debris off the streets of Kiev after a barrage of airstrikes shook the city. Russia had earlier claimed that its military operations will not target civilian
Hi,
infrastructure.
franchise. Just for the time being,
But the ground reality in Kiev paints a different picture altogether.
There's a bomb shelter over here. We spent the night there, and now we are trying to head back to our home. Near my daughter's house, there's an underground parking lot. They've been sitting in the underground parking with their children for 2 days. Honestly, in all these years I have lived, I never thought I would live to witness such horrors.
Earlier, the Ukrainian army also repelled a Russian attack in the main Kiev Avenue. The Victory Avenue is...
So just want to let you guys know, actually, to sum it up, the Ukrainians are actually doing a freaking outstanding job. Right now, they are winning certain fights in certain areas. They're able to repel certain advancements from the Russian army. This is not going quite exactly as Putin had planned. I can tell you that much right now. Based on the last 3 days of fighting, it hasn't been an easy sweep quite as much as Putin was anticipating, or I'm sure hoping for. So we're going to have to see what's going to happen over the next couple of days. But right now, they are gaining some ground. The Ukrainians are holding very strong, all things considered.
Part of the city, where authorities claim that Russia targeted an army base. Artillery rounds and intense gunfire were heard in the region.
We're going to talk about an anonymous right after this.
A police car was on fire on a street in Kiev as Russian troops stormed towards the Ukrainian capital, with several instances of street fighting also reported.
Okay. Two cars.
Currently, Ukrainian troops are defending their positions on all 4 fronts of the city, despite being heavily outnumbered. Kiev right now is divided between two sets of people. One, who have packed their bags and are fleeing towards the west in fear, most of them being children, women and the elderly. And the other side, which has now taken up arms to defend the country.
A tiny island is held up by a massive Russian warship. Ukraine troops called them up and told them to fuck off.
Molotov cocktails,
Heard about
which are
that.
petrol bombs essentially. The country has banned all male citizens from 18 to 60 years from leaving the country. The Russian invasion has robbed all forms of normalcy in the capital. The once prized, vibrant European capital, Kiev, has been left in chilling silence.
Not yet. So we're going to come back to this. I just want to show you really quickly. So apparently there is I will show you guys this. Let me see if I can switch this. Gaming? Yeah. Okay, sorry, I haven't used this monitor in a while. Okay, so apparently Anonymous, as you guys know, Anonymous yesterday was declared that they were waging war, and they were going to do what they could to help from the cybersecurity side to wage war on Russia. As you guys know, cyber attacks by Russia is one of the main modes of defense that Russia has typically been putting a lot of investment into. They've been working a lot with their cyber teams to hack things better. They recently
Ekfas just
hacked the Pentagon
resubscribed for 23
almost
months.
like about a year and a half ago
Sireda
now.
EQ, Sireda Mood, Sireda
So
Baby.
it's been announced, there's been reports that are coming out that the Russian TV channels have been hacked by Anonymous, and they're showing the Russian citizens what's actually going on in Ukraine. So this is apparently a video of that. Let's see what's going on. And they're playing Ukrainian songs. So you see, this is a video that has been uploaded from inside of Russia, and every channel that you try to go to is the same thing being broadcast, which is footage of what is happening in the Ukraine. And every channel that you go to in Russia is broadcasting actual footage of the Ukraine conflict, which, by the way, is not exactly what the Russians had in mind when they
Smile big. Your
It's
best.
not exactly what the Russians had in mind in terms of like what they're going to be broadcasting to their own people. All right, let's check this
First
one out.
artificially generated news presenter from cybernews.com, a reliable source for regular cybersecurity advice, news, and opinion.
Greetings, citizens of the world. This is a message to Vladimir Putin, from Anonymous. Mr. Putin, the ongoing invasion of Ukraine has shown that your regime has no respect for human rights, or the self-determination of your neighbors. Members of Anonymous have declared cyber war against your aggressive regime.
So this is a video that was put out and broadcast in English to the Russian government, and specifically addressed to Vladimir Putin.
With numerous
And
government
this
websites
came
being
out
taken
about 12
offline in the
hours
past
ago.
several days.
February 25th.
Thursday evening, the Anonymous Collective declared a cyber war against Russia as Putin's forces closed in on the Ukrainian capital. And it looks like they were serious. On Friday evening, Anonymous claimed they managed to breach the database belonging to the Russian Ministry of Defense.
So apparently
The
they've
group's
already
actions appear to be part of a growing trend,
claimed that they have been able to access.
and that is seeing a growing number of cyber soldiers take to the newest front in the war against Russia.
My voice? Here, how's
Anonymous
this? Better?
posted the database online and made it accessible to anyone. The group tweeted, "Hackers all around the world. Target Russia in the name of #Anonymous. Let them know we do not forgive. We do not forget." It seems that the database contains officials' phone numbers, emails, and passwords. Twitter users seem excited about the news and continue discussing how they could use them to harm Putin's regime. One user suggested, sign them up for GOP and Trump fundraising emails. That will be enough to drive them all crazy. Many encouraged each other to send spam and malware to Russians. The original tweet announcing the leak and containing the link to the database was taken down because it violated the Twitter rules. Anonymous updated their tweet by removing the link. Many activists took Ukraine's calls on the hacker underground to defend against Russia to heart. Earlier today, Anonymous claimed responsibility for taking down Russia's most prominent websites used to spread Kremlin propaganda. Even Pornhub had its say by blocking Russian users and greeting them with the Ukrainian flag and a message of support.
That's crazy.
Such actions represent an escalation.
Yo, the Russians can't even go to Pornhub right now. Now, here's the thing, though, about that. It's really not the Russian people who are the Russian people are suffering the same way that the Ukrainian people are suffering. Russian people, by and large, do not want to invade Ukraine. And they don't agree with what their government is doing. And there's actually quite a few protests happening as well. Demanding and begging for food from the locals. Russians attack Kyiv now.
Prompted by
yeah,
Vladimir
we're going to go
Putin's
into it right
shocking
away.
Decision to launch a full-scale attack on Ukraine this week. Cybersecurity analysts are predicting an upsurge in defense spending across Europe for both digital and conventional warfare, while patriotic or idealistic hackers, anyone with an internet connection, to participate in distributed denial of service.
So basically, Russia is... the Russian people are kind of going through this as well, and if you have any friends who are in Russia or you have any friends who are in Ukraine, I have friends in both countries. I have family in Russia and family in the Ukraine as well. But the Russians that I've spoken with are very concerned about this. They don't know whether or not they need to get out of the country fast. They don't know whether or not they need to take their bank accounts and try to switch. Some of the Russians I even have spoken with are actually sad because they're, look, it's very bad in Russia to speak ill of your country. It's considered something that's very unpopular to do. There's not a lot of popularity on a mainstream level for speaking ill of your country. It's just not something that you do in Russia. But I have some Russian friends who are even saying, like, damn, it's so easy to seek asylum right now. It's so easy to become a refugee if you're from the Ukraine and you can get out of the Eastern Bloc, with some regret in their voices. Like, they wish that they could get asylum and get out of Russia as well. It's not a great place to be right now. It's not a great place to live at the present moment, especially when you have a leader who has assumed total and absolute control over your country and everything in it, and won't allow you, to get out whatsoever. And that's just the beginning of the situation. So hopefully they'll be able to see a little bit more flexibility in their future. But right now it's not looking like something that's anytime soon. All right, let's see. All right,
After weeks of warnings from Western leaders, Russian President Vladimir Putin unleashed a three-pronged invasion of Ukraine. The north, east and south came under heavy attack by ground, air and sea. The invasion has threatened to upend Europe's post-Cold War order.
Охуеть. Я тебе сейчас видео покажу, ты охуеть полетел.
No time soon. So this is another who's the biggest kid on the block kind of deal.
Now for more updates, joining us now live is Russian affairs expert Fred Weir from Moscow. Fred, thanks so much.
This is a situation of...
for joining us on Beyond. I want your take on the recent developments of the day. As usual, we are tracking daily updates in this conflict now. What do you make of Zelensky's presence in Ukraine at this time?
CDO24 just subscribed to the squad.
And he has even rejected a
What's
US
up, Cita?
offer to evacuate him.
Thanks for the sub. He won't stop at Ukraine.
Yes, he's certainly showing a great deal of personal bravery. He's clearly got this leadership potential, and he is displaying it well. It's hard to know. I sit here examining the claims and counterclaims. I've covered wars before, and I know in the early days, you really can't believe anything that military bureaucrats say on either side. You certainly can't believe whatever pops up on your social media feed. You can believe the reports of journalists on the ground and videos that they've taken themselves or voices that they've recorded themselves. But beyond that, it's murky. It's what they call the fog of war. And we're into that big time here. But I think that
he's right in what he's saying. There's you can't trust what's being said by the Russians themselves about what's actually happening. You can't trust what is being broadcast by Russian television and Russian military operatives about the actual situation on the ground, because that's just the way that Russia operates. Oftentimes with the military, there is postulating that occurs.
The next few days will tell whether the Russians have miscalculated badly, or whether they're going to basically fulfill their military goals, which are fairly limited. I think that they want a regime change in Kyiv. All signs show that they are bypassing major cities, other major cities. They may be surrounding them, but not entering Kharkiv or Kherson. They are advancing, or they say they're advancing.
Oh wait, that proxy
Donbass
is happening
front.
right now.
Another two
Which one?
rebel republics claim to have penetrated deep in
Say again, sorry.
Kherson. They are advancing, or they say they're advancing on the Donbass front. Another two rebel republics claim to have penetrated deep into the territory that they claim in Donetsk and Luhansk regions. But again, these are Russian claims. I don't know.
We don't have any footage currently that we've seen that shows the Chechen army or Russian military forces in the Donbass region having advanced over the border into the Donbass region. Am I correct? Has anyone seen any of that footage?
Ukrainians say their front is holding.
It's hard to tell what the most current info is. So that's what we're doing right now. We're kind of peeling through all of the updates, everything that's been sort of announced, and I'm pulling together for you guys some information right now to try to get you all the way up to date. As of yesterday, as you guys know, the present situation is that there's been decently heavy bombing by the Russians in 3 key areas in the Ukraine. One of the areas is very close to the capital. They've taken the airspace close to the capital, which is an important political move for the Russians, because if they are going to invade and take the capital, they're going to need an airspace close by to the city. So they've already taken that at present moment. Obviously, as you guys know, they've taken Chernobyl, and but they still have 2 different areas in the Ukraine that they are dealing with at the same time. And from some of the analysts that we were speaking with or listening to last night, their suggestion, as a sort of a educated guess as to the modus operandi of the Russian army, is to take the capital by driving the forces that the Ukraine has into these other separate areas in the Donbass region, drawing them down, luring them out of the city, and then creating a mass exodus of refugees to exit the city and effectively coming back into the space of the capital and taking the capital while most of the forces are occupied in other parts of the country.
Firm. And so I know
one of the economic experts said before the 5 years that the Ukraine is dragged to big disaster and the country will destroy after 5 years, and it's happening now. Well, we can't count our eggs before they're in the basket. You can't say just yet that the Ukraine has fallen. It hasn't yet.
It's account of what's really going on right now, but that's really, really hard for anybody to produce.
It's really hard, yeah.
Right, absolutely. I think for a while we at WION have been tracking the recent updates. Before I pose my next question to you, Fred, I'd like to get our viewers up to date with all the recent updates that have happened so far in this conflict. At the moment, what we're covering is that the battle has now begun for the control of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. That's what reports are suggesting at this point. Recently, an apartment building was hit by a missile or rocket early this morning, and now fighting...
Which, by the way, it's important to note that in case you weren't sure about the Russians giving information that's not necessarily correct, just yesterday, the defense minister for the Russians claimed that they were not targeting civilian buildings whatsoever.
Has reportedly spilled,
and here we are, not 12 hours later.
To the streets, explosions and gunfire has been heard overnight, as according to reports, Russian troops
an apartment building
closing in on the capital and are advancing.
They also hit a hospital yesterday, which technically is a war crime.
Or towards the city. In all of this, Ukrainian President Zelensky has refused a U.S. offer to evacuate him from Kyiv. He says that I don't need a ride.
Ukraine says 2,800 Russian soldiers have been killed. Ukraine pleads to Germany, send air defense rockets. So as far as I understand it, Germany has responded at this point. We're going to cover that in just a moment.
In fact, I need ammunition. Once again, making a call for military aid for Ukraine in its moment of crisis. Meanwhile, more than 120,000 people have fled Ukraine since Russia's assault began. Beyond World is...
So, to answer your question, why does Russia love Putin so much? Why don't they kill him? To understand the political climate in Russia, you have to understand the past 10, 15 years of the conflict that Russia has had within itself with the overturns of the different regimes. The last 30, 40, even 50 years of Russian leadership has been one of backstabbing, one of betrayals of previous cabinet regimes. There's been a lot of political upheaval through the dissolution of the USSR ever since 1991. And it's not so easy to say, oh, we're just going to oust him. They enacted democratic elections, and just the way that Russia's very corrupt. I'm just going to say it. Russia's an extremely corrupt country. Everything is privatized. People are in the pockets of Putin. Putin is in the pockets of the oligarchs. Effectively, there's a couple of very, very wealthy people at the top. And they just have absolutely control over everything. You can't even begin to have a political career in Russia unless you support Putin, or you're not going to win. You just won't win. It's just not the way that things go over there. And you have to be very careful if you live in a country that still is allowing democratic elections, that you exercise your rights to vote, so that you don't fall into a similar situation where the absolute corruption at the top is something that's going to affect your life in a different way. Okay, let me go into this. Hold on. Let me get you guys something here. Let me see. Let me see here. Here we go.
Germany has backed down on an initial refusal to send weapons to support Ukraine as it battles the Russian invasion. Berlin has now agreed to a major armaments delivery, including anti-tank weapons, surface-to-air missiles,
Что Россия агрессор? Россия, я не знаю, Россия агрессор.
And rocket-propelled grenades. The policy shift brings Germany into line with other Western allies supplying weapons to Ukraine. Earlier, Chancellor Olaf Scholz met leaders from Poland and Lithuania to discuss imposing tougher sanctions against Russia on top of measures.
So Germany has finally agreed a couple of hours ago.
Bolstering the NATO military presence in several EU countries.
The broadcast you're watching right now
is also
DW
on the
News.
table. With me in the studio is political correspondent Thomas Sparrow. Thomas, welcome. The shift from Germany here to the delivery of lethal weapons, how significant is
Break on the Rose, what did you say?
This has to be one of the most significant shifts in German foreign policy in years. What has happened not only now but this week in Germany. You may remember that at the beginning of the week, the shift there was that Germany had decided to halt or to freeze the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline which links Russia to Germany. That was already then a major change. And now you have this, also a very significant change, because Germany had had a long-standing policy of not sending weapons to crisis.
Are you talking about what he's saying about Germany? Turning off the pipeline between Russia and Germany?
Zones because
yeah,
of its
DW News, Deutsche Welle.
Own belligerent history, because it believed that it could...
Sorry, is it quiet? Here, hold on. Let me figure this out. Oh, I know why. Here, let me turn everything up. Sorry, guys. How is this? Better?
Make diplomacy more difficult. There were other reasons as well, but the fact that now the German government has confirmed that it is indeed sending weapons to Ukraine, both directly from its own Bundeswehr stocks, but also indirectly through countries like the Netherlands or Estonia, is really a remarkable shift in foreign policy in Germany.
And quite a few things shifting as we speak. Germany is also joining other EU countries in supporting targeted restrictions on Russia's use of the SWIFT financial system
in foreign policy in Germany.
Okay.
And quite a few.
So yeah, as you guys know, Germany was nowhere near granting lethal weapons to send to the Ukraine, as were none of the NATO countries were planning on doing that. The sanctions that they've been putting on the Ukraine in the past couple of days, they didn't include any oil and gas sanctions. So up until 24 hours ago, none of the oil and gas sanctions that the NATO countries could put on the Ukraine. And if you don't know what that means, let me know. I'm not trying to make this like a very high level political stream. I just want to explain what's happening. So for anybody who doesn't know, a sanction is when they say, for example, okay, you're doing something bad over here, so we're not going to buy your oil anymore. All right, you're fucking up over here. You're violating international law. You're having an invasion on a free foreign country. You're citing that there's a Naziist threat within the city of the Ukraine, within the country of Ukraine, within Kyiv, which is why you need to invade them. However, obviously, this is a reach. The reasons why Putin is invading the Ukraine are sus at best. So it's a sanction is basically when they say, all right, we're not going to buy your oil anymore, or we're not going to we're not going to let you use this or that. So the sanctions up until just a couple of days ago that NATO was putting on the Ukraine they didn't include any oil and gas sanctions. And the reason why this is important is because you have to keep in mind that a lot of Western Europe and a lot of these countries that are close to the border with Russia, especially even Germany, for example, 30% of the oil and gas that Germany uses comes from Russia. The reason why this is important is because it's the middle of winter right now. So if you lose your oil and gas, then you don't have heat, and then you don't have electricity. You can't, you're going to be cold. Like it's really going to affect the people of Germany themselves. So there's a pipeline. I heard it was 40%. I've heard 30, 40, even 50%. But a figure I can 100% stand behind is at least 30%. So this is what they mean when they say a sanction. Just so you guys know. So up until 24 hours ago, the United States and all of the other NATO countries, which are countries, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, countries that are surrounding Ukraine, have neighboring borders with Ukraine, like Poland, for example, they weren't putting sanctions on the energy. They weren't putting sanctions on oil and gas from Russia. They were sanctions on other things that didn't affect the countries as much.
Few things shifting as we
'cause
speak. Germany.
But Russia lose the money because they don't sell the gases in Europe. Actually, Karpov, so Russia has already made a deal with China, and China's made it clear that they're not going to honor the NATO sanctions. And China has already agreed to over $100 billion deal with Russia. They will buy the oil that Russia's not selling to Europe anymore. So that's important to remember as well.
Is also joining other EU countries in supporting targeted restrictions on Russia's use of the SWIFT financial system. What's changed in Germany's position?
And the key word is targeted, because for now Germany had also been very reluctant to support other EU countries in banning Russia from the SWIFT financial system, because it believed that by doing so there would be major collateral damage here in Germany for businesses that work with Russia, or for gas deliveries that come from Russia to Germany. But now the change is that they want to work in a way that they can have this targeted way of sanctioning Russia in this regard, which that basically means is that they'll try and find ways in which those collateral damages are reduced to a minimum, while at the same time making sure that the ban is implemented so that Russia can be affected.
We're also hearing that the first groups of people fleeing the war in Ukraine have arrived through Poland and to it here in Germany. Do we know yet how many people are taking that journey?
This is actually another element of this whole conflict. So it's not only about sending weapons to Ukraine or imposing more sanctions on Russia. It's also about making sure that people who are fleeing the conflict in Ukraine can be received not only here in Germany but also in other countries. If you look at EU and UN estimates, the numbers of people who might flee.
Sterem Kurek, send the link to my mods. Can I get a mod check?
Very high number indeed. So far here in Germany, those numbers are more limited. So the border region between Germany and Poland, federal state of Brandenburg has said that it is expecting up to 10,000 people. Here in Berlin, the first few families have also been registered. Numbers are still very low, but those numbers could increase certainly if the conflict worsens. That why
they've said about 150,000 Ukrainians have already left. Now keep in mind that the men can't leave the Ukraine. Men aged 18 to 60 have been asked to stay behind in Ukraine. They're not allowed to leave. They have to stay and fight the Russians. You've got old men not even wearing shirts being handed AK-47s. You've got kids who are just like 18, 19 years old, and all they're being handed guns right on the spot and said, hey, go get ready to fight the Russians. And they're being asked to make Molotov cocktails. This has nothing to do with the $800 billion military budget. The $800 billion military budget for whom? Even the women are staying, girl. Some of the women are also staying, right. Some women are staying to fight. Some are fleeing to seek refugee status from other countries, in other countries. Like, for example, Poland. And some of the refugees are also going quickly over to Germany.
Preparations are also underway, not only here in Germany, but also in countries like Poland, to make sure that people who flee the conflict in Ukraine can also be accepted and taken in a humane
Hello,
way.
Krivbas.
Our political correspondent, Thomas Sparrow. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, it is.
We'll be joined now by Daria
Приємно
Romanenko. She's an
познайомитися.
aid worker in eastern Ukraine. Daria, tell us where you are at the moment, and do you feel safe?
Good evening. Well, yes, I'm in Dnipro right now. It's a big city in eastern part of Ukraine, but the road here was
what Putin is doing is
pretty
God's
tough.
work.
We left Slovenia.
He might think so. This is the thing. Like, remember what I was telling you guys about making sure that Russia in its borders includes the original capital, the original Holy Roman, Holy Byzantine capital of the original Ukraine. The original Moscow in Ukraine. To Putin, this is a holy cause, as well as a deeply patriotic Russian cause. To have the original place of the Russian inception, according to how he understands it, to be a part of Russian country once again, is a very important point for Putin and has been for a really long time.
Today, first aiming to go to Kharkiv, where our driver came from just maybe a couple of hours ago, and then we couldn't go back because the street was blocked, like the main street connecting Sloviansk and Kharkiv was blocked by Russian tanks, so we had to make a U-turn. After that, we were driving a lot through Donetsk Oblast, entering Dnipro region, and then there were so many checkpoints and military vehicles, and we were standing in traffic jam for more than 3 hours when we were reaching Dnipro. So, yeah, it was a tough travel.
Daria, Russia says it's only targeting military infrastructure. You're on the ground. Do you see that as the case? Is that what you're seeing?
This is not the case. This is a lie. Russia is targeting hospitals, kindergartens. It's targeting just normal places and areas where people live, but it's nothing new. I've been working in Donbass for some time where, for example, shellings of kindergartens and schools started already weeks ago and in general 8 years ago. And those reports from Kyiv that there are apartment buildings shelled, they're definitely truth.
Donya, Volodymyr Zelensky was a comedian, then a businessman, and now he's the president. Do you feel now he is the leader that you need? Are people behind him? Do they see him as the right leader for this situation?
Well, let's see. He didn't flee the country. He stayed with his people. What it seems to me he's doing his best.
China is definitely not prepared to uphold the sanctions on Russia. They've made that clear already a couple of times. When sanctions have been imposed on Russia in the past, China has made it very clear that they don't intend to follow suit. And it's important to remember as well that China does not want NATO stretching any further into the east either. The common enemy that China and Russia have together is the expansion of NATO. It doesn't serve China's interests at all to have NATO in its backyard and bullying into its geographical space. And Russia feels strongly similarly. So when the sanctions are imposed on Russia, China has no intention of following suit. China, if they have any attempts to block Russia, will be half-hearted at best. Right, if that. Keep in mind that the trade ties and the export ties that Russia and China have been conducting together, the increase in the business that they've been doing together in the past couple of months even, has been extreme. They're selling, like we were looking at it yesterday, as we covered yesterday, they're increasing the production of meat that's going to China. Russia is providing China with lots of resources that China needs. And they're even conducting military exercises together in the Japanese Sea. It's Japan and China are not the same country, Flatman. Biggest military in the world, scared of us. China is dipping and dodging Western countries as it moves across Asian Pacific. They are expansion and money mode, as they have been for quite a while. China will help Russia get around all the sanctions. Well, China doesn't even necessarily... Russia has been preparing for these sanctions. They know the sanctions that they're going to face by invading the Ukraine, and they've been prepared for them. They already did the deal with China that's going to allow them to continue to sell their oil. So when the U.S. or the NATO countries decide to turn sanctions on and impose sanctions on Russian oil across Europe, they don't have to worry. Russia doesn't have to worry. Over the past couple of years, Russia's been storing currency and saving up currency for this moment. Russia has the 4th largest currency reserve in the world presently. So when it's, like I said before yesterday, this is not something that Putin just decided to do today. Putin's been preparing for this moment for a long time. The way that Putin moves, he moves slowly, he moves methodically, he tries to cover his bases. And we don't even fully know the true intentions of why he's decided to make a move on the Ukraine yet, as it is. We know that he wants to take Kyiv. We know that he wants to invade. We know that he wants Crimea to be a part of Russia or under his control. We know that he stands for Russian expansionism, and he has ever since the USSR was still in power. He's extremely patriotic, and he's extremely cunning, and he's ruthless. He's a ruthless, very ruthless, very dangerous leader. And he gets rid of anybody who stands in his way. And he has for a long time. NATO is more symbolic than anything. Putin take on NATO is BS, in my opinion. NATO is more symbolic than anything over the past 20 years. Europe and the USA as well. He doesn't want to pay the Ukraine for oil transfer fees. I mean, it's more than that. It's more than he just doesn't want to pay Ukraine for stuff. He doesn't want the Ukraine to become a part of the West. Ukraine has become increasingly westernized. The people of the Ukraine decided to oust the former Ukrainian president who was in power up until 2014 in the Ukraine. That was a blow to Putin. He had somebody in the Ukraine who was doing his bidding for many years. He was able to keep the Ukraine from joining the European Union, from joining NATO, personally, by having a puppet in control and in power in Ukraine. So when Zelensky won the election, that was a big blow to Putin's plans for his own foreign policy interests. Isn't Russia the 4th largest country in the world? Russia has the 4th largest currency reserve. Well, Russia has been saving up currency. So, for example, if the SWIFT system turns off for Russia right now, they're not going to be as impacted as they would have been if they hadn't been preparing for this moment.
Best. I personally didn't vote for him. I just didn't vote in Ukraine in general. But
okay, let's skip
to
up.
me, it seems like
let's skip up here.
Deep below the
Germany had organized our evacuation and run.
Okay.
many people location. Igor, 3 days into this invasion, tell me about your experience so far.
By the way, a lot of people were commenting yesterday in my stream that, like, I hate the United States. I don't know where those comments are coming from. I love America as well. And because I'm giving unbiased opinions on all sides, I try to give as unbiased opinions as I can on all sides. That doesn't mean I hate a country.
I haven't seen any direct fighting myself, but many explosions. There was some Yes.
I don't know who. I don't know why people say that about me.
Have shown that the Russians have not been.
I actually think that what the United States stands for in theory, not necessarily always in practice, but I think that what the United States stands for in theory, with the Constitution, is one of the most important things that we have. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's one of the most important things that civilization has right now as a template of what to aspire to, of what to try to create for its citizens.
As effective as many experts could have predicted. They've made blunders. Ukraine has made surprising...
It's difficult, Smile. I'm very sorry for the Russian people as well as the Ukrainian people right now, because the Russians don't want this.
The Ukrainians
Many Russians do not want this.
Because they're fighting for their very existence, whereas the Russians seem to be mostly very young people who were born after Putin came into power.
Where were you from, Spulin?
Many of them are the POWs.
I'm praying that Putin can see the light. Putin is not going to see the light. For Putin, controlling the Ukraine is a win. That's the light for Putin. I'm sorry to say it. I don't think he's going to see the light anytime soon.
By Ukraine are saying that they were just told they were heading towards exercises when they were ordered to invade, and then they found themselves just thrown into an invasion.
Ukraine's president...
I do think Kyiv has a... Yes.
Sorry, Igor. Ukraine's president is urging civilians to battle Russian troops with self-made Molotov cocktails. What are you planning to do?
I'm planning to stay and report and do my job. I want to make sure the world sees all of this and what happens here, and that's my focus. Thank you very much.